Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball. Let's Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined today by Matt Moreno. Matt, we are continuing in our series of videos breaking down positional rankings according to Buster Olney of ESPN. And today, I think we maybe get to the one that Dodger fans will have the most varied opinion on. That is center field and Cody Bellinger. Olney has Cody Bellinger ranked as the number 7 center fielder in the league behind Mike Trout, Starling Marte, Brian Reynolds, George Springer, Luis Robert, and Cedric Mullins. Of course, Bellinger on a 1-year, $17 million contract to avoid arbitration his last year with the Dodgers before he heads to free agency. So I'll ask you the question I've asked every time we do one of these conversations. Cody Bellinger, number 7 center fielder, overrated, underrated, or properly rated?
Well, if you look at it from the lens of this is, it was an off-season list, he's probably, I think you'd have to say, a little overrated in this regard, only because he's coming off a pretty down year. Even the season before that, he struggled. Obviously, it was a shortened schedule, and everybody kind of dealt with a lot of change that year in 2020. But we haven't really seen, the Cody Bellinger, the MVP, the Rookie of the Year that he was in seasons past. And so I guess overrated in that sense. But if you ask me, what I kind of expect from Bellinger this season, I would say it's probably about right, because I think he will get back to kind of being a productive player this year, not necessarily the all-star that we've seen. And again, he does bring a ton of value defensively in center field, which can't be overlooked.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you and I, of course, talked about this earlier in the week on our show, breaking down kind of what we expect. We know his spring troubles, something like 18 strikeouts and 30 plate appearances is what we've seen thus far. And whether or not that's going to improve, how long of a leash he's going to get. But you kind of hinted at it. I mean, it's worth repeating just kind of to put in perspective. We're not talking about a guy who's slumping. We're talking about like a historical level, Andrew Jones level slump. Last season, weighted runs created plus. Again, this is a number where 100 is league average. There were 224 players in Major League Baseball who had at least 350 plate appearances last year. Cody Bellinger was 223rd out of 224. Only Jackie Bradley Jr. was worst. His StatCast stuff, 20th percentile in hard hit percentage, 3rd percentile in expected batting average. That means everybody in the league was better than him. 14th percentile in slugging, expected slugging, 17th in strikeout rate, 17th percentile whiff rate, 26th percentile chase rate. If you want to look for some, maybe he got better as the season went on. No, batting average by month, 118 in June, 130 in July, 191 in August, 176 in September and October. If you say, too small of a sample size, well, let's combine 2020 and 2021. That's 151 games, almost 600 at-bats. He's hitting 195 with a 278 on base, 364 slugging. There is 22 home runs, but that weighted runs created plus, I mentioned, 74. So 26% below average, 0.4 wins above replacement for Bellinger across those years. The optimistic side of me can point to the postseason. He hit 353 with a 436 on-base percentage, 471 slugging percentage last year, and that was 12 games, just 39 at-bats, 5 stolen bases, though. So Bellinger's a fascinating one for me, because one thing that has been consistent is he's a great defensive player. I mean, we can't discount the fact that this guy was a first baseman who has now turned into an elite center fielder. Offensively, though, it's interesting. He's had 2 amazing years, 2017 Rookie of the Year, 2019 MVP. One solid year, 2018, he was fine. He hit 260, weighted runs created of 120. And now one atrocious year if you want to combine 2020 and 2021 into one thing. And so he's such a hard thing because we know what his ceiling is. I mean, his ceiling, when you look at these guys, Trout, Marte, Reynolds, Springer, like he belongs in the conversation with those guys if he's at his best. And yet if we see even anything remotely close to what we've seen over the last 600 at-bats, he doesn't belong anywhere near the top 10 of any list, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's tough. It's a complex issue because if you want to kind of look at 2021, I think there is some stock to putting in. Look, he was coming back from shoulder surgery, which I've brought up in the past. Several players have said it takes them kind of a full year to sort of fully recover, get the strength and range of motion back into that. So maybe that can kind of explain last year. But like you said, then there's still 2020, which it was a little bit of an odd season for everybody. So maybe give him some benefit of the doubt there, but really even his MVP year, the second half of that season, he sort of fell off a cliff, and some of it was the first half was relatively historic, and so he wasn't necessarily going to keep up that same pace. But I think the decline was certainly a lot steeper than most of us would have anticipated. So like how, like you said, how do you kind of view him, right? Because it's not just 1 year, it's not kind of just one thing, and now here we are, going through spring training and into another season where he's still sort of messing with his batting stance and his hands and this and that, and so it's tough. I mean, it's definitely a fascinating case, and it'll be interesting to see, maybe at the end of the season, if we look back at who he was ranked ahead of and behind and kind of see where he may place after another full year of hopefully turning things around.
I actually went back and looked because I remembered the same thing, that the second half of that MVP year was not great. Now, it was fine. Like, it was still very good. It was like he went from like the best player in the league to like an all-star level player. So I was expecting to see some really rough numbers in the second half. I didn't find them. But like you said, okay, we can write off the season post shoulder surgery. Again, plenty of guys have come back from shoulder surgery and not been literally the second worst hitter in all of baseball, but fine. But what do we do with 2020, where he was fine, but not great, like still well below his own standards, and yes, COVID. So it's kind of like, how many excuses do you want to make? And I think the bottom line for me with Bellinger is the eye test. There are guys like Mookie Betts that when they struggle, you watch them and it almost doesn't make sense that they're struggling. Because you're like, it looks the same to me. They seem dialed in. They seem all these different things. With Bellinger, it just doesn't pass the eye test. It looks like a guy who's completely lost. He's uppercutting everything. He's swinging through everything. 18 strikeouts and 30 at-bats to start the spring. Those types of things are what concerns me, is that I can't even look at something and say, well, at least he looks good. It's going to work out at some point. I don't think anybody is saying that with Bellinger. Now, he's joked, as we've talked about on here, like, oh, I'm just getting all the strikeouts out of the way in the beginning, in spring training. And look, Justin Lorber said something on our show earlier. He's like, if there's bad in spring training, I ignore it. And if there's good in spring training, then I think about it a little bit. Spring training is kind of a mess. We talked about how bad Mookie Betts has been. So maybe we give Bellinger the benefit of the doubt. But obviously, the leash is going to be a lot shorter for him as the season starts. And who knows? I mean, if you told me like that Bellinger 2 weeks into the season is hitting 320, I wouldn't be that surprised, because I think he has the athleticism and we've seen the talent. But I would be, if you said he's either going to be hitting 320 or 180, which do you think? Is there anybody that's not going to guess 180 if given those two choices? So we'll see. As you pointed out, this ranking is either going to be crazy good or crazy bad by the end of the season. We'll see that. That's Matt Moreno. My name is Jeff Spiegel. As always, we appreciate you joining us as we march toward opening day. Check out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And please find us wherever you get your podcast. Please follow, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd greatly appreciate that. That helps us out a lot. And of course, subscribe, ring the notification bell here as well. We appreciate you joining us. We'll see you next time.